Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to be here. Well, I have to say it is slightly bittersweet because I had hoped to reach 40 before I was in the company of an intimidating young man that I felt had surpassed me. Managed to avoid it thus far, but not tonight. I'm the membership director at BCS, which means that I run one of the business units and I'm an employer in addition to being responsible for an element of how we discharge our charitable functions. I've also worked for large and small companies, including Intel, and for the University of Southampton. So I come to you as someone who is very much from a commerce side. This is my first charity that I've worked for, and I'm very business focused, but I also really value universities. So I'd like to say that just coming to work for BCS, I was quite shocked at when hearing debates on this over the last 7 years, just how we never seem to move on. And I hope that tonight we can actually move on and hold opinions on this that are more widely informed and more subtle than some of the debates that I have seen previously on this. And I don't think that we do it deliberately, and I don't think that we do it because we fail to think about that, but because we are focused on the needs in front of us. One of the things that you hear from a lot of employers is that IT degrees are not meeting their needs. You hear that they are frustrated with the skills that are put in front of them by new graduates. And those in universities who may be able to answer this are often shouted down by those who suggest that universities can meet all of those needs. And so we have this, I think, dysfunction of employers sometimes asking things that they don't really want, and universities saying they can provide things that they really can't or shouldn't. And I'll make 2 main points, the first of which is that we've got to get back to the purpose of education. I think, and I offer no evidence other than the own reflection in your minds for this, that education has 2 purposes. One is utility. So it is quite reasonable to expect that there is some relationship between what people learn in an academic environment and a professional activity. That has to last for their whole lifetime, though, I'd say, not just the first 6 months of their employment. But the second purpose is a moral purpose. We sometimes forget that commerce itself is not here just to make money. It's actually about prosperity. And what definition of prosperity can there be that doesn't include education and free thinking? So a university education, for example, academic education, serves a purpose that is not just about economic activity. It's about creating people of integrity. So I think the first reason that with this motion is correct is because university education, academic education, is not designed, should not be designed to meet the needs of the IT profession. The second point that I would like you to consider is that the role of employers is something that is very important and misunderstood here. This idea that you want a shrink-wrapped individual who is ready to work is, well, it's slightly mad, isn't it, really? I mean, there are things that you can better learn in work than in university. That is not a traducement of the university environment. It is just that you can't simulate some things. If I were to take my shirt off right now, which just I would really like to reassure you I'm not going to, you would see the scars of meetings with customers where I've got purple-faced people yelling at me because of a mistake made by a software engineer because they didn't adhere to coding standards. Now, which university can claim that they can get their students to adhere to boring coding standards? I haven't yet found one that I've believed, certainly. And that you cannot, in the university environment, communicate the sheer frustration and angst that I have felt by people not doing their jobs properly there. So imagine this, a student in a university is being told by their lecturer about how important these things are. Perhaps they're attending that lecture, perhaps they've decided to come in late that day. Perhaps, they listen and they take it on board and it goes in, but do they really feel it? Whereas imagine if I'm your employer and you are there and I'm telling you that you obey those coding standards or you can sling your hook. It is different. And that an employer has a different relationship. Because education, the idea that it is the banker method of education, that they are an empty piggy bank and you just slot in information. You're changing people, you're expanding their minds. and that the environment in which you do that is incredibly important. The drivers that are acting on that person when they are in receipt of that education, they are important. There are some things that are important to being a professional that you have to learn in a professional environment. So universities, academic education cannot meet those skills needs. I think that the other thing that is important to realise is that an academic education is for the most part about a foundation. I know, and I can say this because I'm not speaking on behalf of my organisation, that the top of the tree subject, physics, has stood me in great stead. I do very little in the way of physics these days. I can't remember anything to do with Heisenberg, really, or Schrodinger's equation.
Can I raise a point of interest? I think you stated that physics was at the top of the tree.
I realise that those who've done mathematics, as an example, have views that could stand some further scrutiny on this particular subject, but I'd ask if the entire debate team on your side supports that position or not. I don't know, Madam Chair, is that out of order to ask that question? A little bit, but maybe I shall ask it rhetorically. Okay, in that case, well, we shall see, I guess. No, computing is marvellous. I think I ought to say that, and I do believe it. But it's just that on a physics course, they teach you relativity and quanta, thermodynamics, and arrogance in the first semester, and they don't let you go on to the rest of the course until you've passed all three. So where was I? I mean, it's really very rude, these interruptions. But so an academic education is something that is designed to be a foundation for the rest of your life. It's not something, and I think this is a very important point, that the way we're looking at universities statistically, we pay a lot of attention to what happens in the first 6 months after graduation. That actually we're saying in some ways that how a big value of a university education is what happens in that first 6 months. And I think that's terribly wrong. And I think as employers, we need to say, what kind of people do we want to have in the IT profession? Do we want to have people who are free thinkers, who are creative people, who've learnt to problem solve in that environment, and then can have that overlaid with the kind of professional induction that we can provide actually in industry or in whichever environment they're working in? I think we do. And I think the danger is that if employers are putting too much emphasis on the wrong things, they will get something that they don't ultimately want. And I think also that we need to recognise that the IT profession is changing. The idea that we are going to be automata running project management and multiple layers of management through to coders who have got no clue what it was that they were first asked to do with. The way things are going with running agile projects, with digital, it's all about a very human interaction and about creativity. And that the IT profession will only exist and prosper if it is able to meet those challenges, to be multidisciplinary, to learn to interact, and to learn to be creative and focused at the same time, as well as all of the things that we value: ethical, reliable, competent, and that taking regard to a wide array of things that such as disability and data protection. So as I say, academic education is a foundation. It is not there to meet the needs of that first period of employment. So this motion stands. It is a foundation. The important thing about foundations is you can't live in them, but you can build on them. And your house will be better if you do.